Torch, Dark Return, Shakedown, Annihilate, Argent Instigator, Black Hall War Leader, Rista, and Champion of Chaos, and Semway Smuggler. So yeah, pretty standard list really that I could see. A little lighter on removal than usual, but still 2 Annihilates and 4 Desecrates are their suite with, obviously, like we mentioned, the Suffocate, the Edict, and the 2 Edicts in the market.
All right, well, we're down to the action here. YurickYu on the bottom, Rokoku on the top. This is the first game of round 2. So both of these players at 1-0. YurickYu had to go down to the emergency 6 here on the bottom with the double mulligan. Not a bad 6 to keep here. They've got an Impatient Pyromage and a Black Hole War Leader and a Flame Blast. But of course, with these decks, you never really want to go to 6. It's really unfortunate to have to do that. I'm sure YurickYu's not happy about it. But if you're going to be stuck with 6, not a bad 6 to start with.
Yeah, it's all about tempo with this deck. You want to establish a little bit of early aggression. Honestly, the fact that they have a really solid 2-drop in the form of Black Hole War Leader means that there is a good chance that it might not hurt them as bad as you would hope. Just because typically these decks, when they mold down to 6, the hard part is when they don't have an aggressive start. So then not only are they down a card, but they're also kind of on the back foot.
All right, Rokoku going to start off with a 1-drop, pretty consistent that we've seen from that deck with the Borderlands look at. Starting at a 2-3, YurickYu going to play his own 2-3 in the Black Hole War Leader. His attack costing a little bit more, but also has a very powerful second ability there.
Rokoku showing respect for the Black Hole War Leader, firing off that Equivocate to bounce it back in the hand and then swinging in for 2. But YurickYu still gets a little bit of value should they get up there in Avalanche Yeti. It's going to be something that may come into play later on should we get to the late game in these 2 aggressive decks.
That's one of the exciting things about Equivocate is what powerful card your 2-drop or 3-drop might accidentally get turned into.
Ooh, Rokoku though, not worried about removal here. Turn 3 Sodi and trying to get ahead on cards. We see YurickYu shake down first to see if they're able to, and they get rid of a Geneve Merchant. And then sure enough, the Flame Blast comes down for 3, taking out the Sodi. So very good use of power here for YurickYu, getting 2 spells on turn 4 and still getting it for 4 damage. So sadly here, the boards are pretty even right now, despite YurickYu having the mold down to 6.
Yeah, very good play there for YurickYu. That was actually the rare 3-drop Sodi. So Sodi does cost 3, but if you look at the influence, it's triple time, triple primal. So you actually have to get 3 straight dual power sources to be able to cast that on 3. But Rokoku able to do that. I don't think I would be able to hold back either. If I get the Sodi on 3, I'm firing it off as well. Not holding that for potential removal. But YurickYu drawing out of the 6 very well. Able to really deploy some real threats here. Be able to decimate there. Get an Ash Elemental and keep playing out threats, and then has removal in the back if they're ever able to pop this Daring Griffin.
Unstable form really going to do some work against this deck, being a bunch of 2 and 3 drops where you're not losing too much should you in unstable form versus a bigger deck. You have a hard time trying to risk unstable forming like a 6-drop. But YurickYu still drawing very well, still has an aggressive board state here. They drew a Flame Blast, which obviously is a little bit hindered by that Daring Phoenix. So they're going to go with a Rista first, draw their 5th power, play their 5th power, triggering both Ristas in play, even though only one can attack. And they're going to swing in with both units that can essentially trade. And we see a trade with the Borderland Scout with the Lazy Fireman, and then Rista gets in for 4, taking Rokoku down to 14. YurickYu deploys the 3/3 Elemental and then sends it back over to Rokoku.
Yeah, and that's a little awkward. Flame Blast is not the spell that you want to try to pop the Daring Griffin because you have to spend your remaining power when you cast it. You actually have to be able to... you actually waste your whole turn doing that, so not in a position to play Flame Blast followed up by a Desecrate, which would be nice, but doesn't actually work that way. But YurickYu able to present out all these threats and actually put a lot of pressure on Rokoku here as well. Pretty low life totals for both players here. And now actually with the Desecrate off the top, the double Desecrate available for YurickYu, but that's a lot of life too.
Yeah, they're already at 10. The interesting thing though is the Avalanche Yeti next turn, and it does not count as a spell, so it won't break the Griffin. So there could be a chance that YurickYu might be able to steal this. They're still being very aggressive, pushing Rokoku's life total, and sure enough, we're going to see a trade here from Rokoku, not wanting to go down too far just for a threat of burn spells. So only 1 blocker back for YurickYu, but the attack did take out one of Rokoku's attackers in the form of Teacher of Humility. So it's close. It's 5-10. Your Rokoku comes in the air for 3, obviously having no choice, leaving the Dust Raider back. So that kind of tells me there's a little something going on. Ooh, and we see an unstable. Okay, they were just throwing in the
Yeah, they
concession.
were
Fair
actually
enough.
just dead there. I think they were with the because of the Darren Griffin having reckless. Because of the Darren Griffin
Reckless.
having reckless, they really didn't have another blocker. They just had the one blocker, and they're basically dead on board on the backswing. Um, Actually, Packy, that's a good question. I believe that because I believe it's part of casting the spell that you have to spend that, but I guess it's possible I could be wrong with Flame Blast. That's something we should look up. I actually haven't seen it come up specifically in that case. If that gets countered by Darren Griffin, do you have to pay the rest of your power? I believe you do, but I could be wrong. So that's actually something we should test out at some point. But good question. All right, so YurickYu taking game one on that mulligan to 6. So pretty impressive showing there.
Yeah, and that might also be why Rokoku is so willing to run out that Sodi on turn 3, because they might have had a hand that behind it, and so they were hoping to be able to draw into it should of YurickYu not have the removal spell there, and they just just kind of have you typically Stone Scar typically designs their deck so they have at least one removal spell in hand for the opener, and you always gotta count on for it, and sadly YurickYu had it there.
Right. Okay, so that was game one. Just waiting for our players to get set for game two. Remember, this is 4 rounds of Swiss, followed by a cut to the top 4. And then we'll be showing those after a couple breaks here. But pretty exciting so far. I've been impressed with this deck. Now I haven't seen we haven't really seen the big Praxis. Now we missed out on a little bit of Loco Pojo's early match, but we haven't seen as much of the Boogeymans of the Throne format so far. We haven't seen much of the people didn't bring a lot of Praxis tonight, and then a couple of the decks have kind of disappeared off the map. I know the 3-color Howling Peaks deck was really popular, a month or two ago, but that seems to have dropped off the map. Both on the ladder, it's fallen a little bit out of favor. But I don't think did anybody bring that here tonight. I don't think I saw any of the deck lists.
No. It might be just part of the fact that we just came off of Expedition ECQ, so some people want to play around with some of those archetypes, see if they cross over. The other side of that as well is the fact that, let's be honest, it's a free tournament. So if there's ever a time to brew in a competitive format, this is going to be it.
Yep.
So it could be where people want to try out maybe something off the beaten path versus going with something that's tried and true.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a good point about these tournaments. They are good and able to capture the competitive nature to really put your deck to the test and be able to test it against good competition without really much on the line. It's not like you want to test out a deck for the first time in an ECQ, but sometimes you want to play it in the ladder isn't going to give you the best competition necessarily. So bringing a creative deck or something that you think might have the chops to something like this allows you to play against good competition where people are playing seriously. They're going to play the 3 games with it. They're going to play it seriously the whole time, but you got nothing to lose. There's nothing on the hook there.
Yeah, so that's something for all of you that are watching. Should you tune in every week or every tournament to check out what's going on and stuff. Don't be afraid that if you want to get your feet wet and come in, there's no harm in trying. And if you come out, test your prowess, you never know what you might end up being a little bit better than you think.
Absolutely. All right, YurickYu still trying to get game 2 here with Rokoku. So we're just hanging tight there. So what I'm going to do is we'll switch over to that game as soon as it begins. But we're going to go down and see Jed the Homerid here versus Sakarnan, because that game's going here. So I'm just going to hold up the screen here on the left so I can see when YurickYu goes live here with their game 2. But we'll get to see a little bit about with this game here.
Well, sadly, Jed the Homerid finishes that game off with the maul
pretty quick.
So. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the reemergence of Maul in the meta, because these big Praxis decks and Grodov decks are really trying to maximize their hand value at the end of the game with all these expensive units. And so if you're able to get a couple of intricate bounce spells or well-timed bounce spells, and I think actually the Backlash podcast had just mentioned that one of their previous episodes where people just don't have respect for them all. So look, I'm going to drop Kairos and draw 6 cards. And you're like, okay, kill you?
Yep.
And like, oh yeah. So resurgence of Maul is pretty much kind of to combat the Praxis threat in the format right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, and we are back in here with a start to game 2. Noverb, thanks for bringing that up. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yes, the holiday invitation, the winter invitation will be Tuesday, December 17th. So we'll talk about that a little bit more after this round, but it'll be Tuesday, December 17th. So 4 weeks from tonight. All right. So,
okay, so back-to-back Argentport Instigators for YurickYu, which is one of the stronger 2-drops for the deck, just being able to capitalize on being a bigger unit and doing additional damage when other units die. Of course, YurickYu they missed a second power. They got their third one, or missed their third, I'm sorry. They got their third one this turn. Sadly, it comes into play depleted. So they attempt to fire off a Flame Blast, taking out the Dusk Raider, of course, showing mad respect for the Berserk ability, or Inspire Berserk ability that we saw previously. And then in response, Rokoku equivocates one of the Instigators, bouncing it to hand, turning it into an 0-4 Dairy Cathane. Let's see if that comes into play later on.
absolutely. As you said, a lot of respect for YurickYu, paying a lot of respect to this Dusk Raider, using your turn 3 to fire off a Flame Blast, which is an incredibly useful card for you, especially in the late game. But firing it off on turn 3, really respecting that Dusk Raider, needing to get that off the board, recognizing that that's the way to end this game. They don't want Rokoku to get back into the game by landing a Dusk Raider and giving Berserk to the rest of their units.
So interesting note there that they deployed Arista and went and sought out the Shadow Sigil, but decided to hold off on it to potentially play next turn to get the Empower ability off of Arista versus getting potentially up to their 5th power. They do have multiple 2-drops they could play as well as a 4 in the form of Incarnates, but Rokoku just using that tempo, man, bouncing a defender and getting in for 6 or 5, correction.
Yeah. And that Sodi Spellshaper is such an incredible card. Being able to just, what a tempo swing there. And of course, the risk of not being able to block contributes to that. But what an incredible tempo swing. When we saw YurickYu developing their board early, looked like had a pretty good setup. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Rokoku has bounced their creatures with no blockers, drawing cards, and putting YurickYu pretty much on the back foot there.
We say that, but look at the scores right now. Rokoku is at 10 and YurickYu's at 15. So despite not having the best draw, just the over-aggression of this Stone Scar deck is just keeping up, blow for blow with this Elysian tempo deck.
YurickYu's board not looking quite as good right now. But like you said, the life total is pretty low, and they have a lot of gas in hand, so they might be able to. It's not going to take a lot to finish this off.
Now, we will say this, though. YurickYu has 2 Desecrates in hand. It's interesting to see if they decide to fire those off. If they do, they're going to have to do it soon because their life total is getting precariously low, and it's going to come to a point where they're not going to be able to cast it.
Right, exactly.
So the question is, do they want to ensure enough? I would not be surprised to see one of those Desecrates go to the market. Oh, no, I was wrong. Okay. So instead, what did they throw in the market? The Impatient Pyramid. Right, fair enough. Yep. Fair enough. Upgrading to a Vicious Highwayman.
So, that's going to be pretty good.
Yeah. Depending on the way and how Rokoku attacks. Ooh.
No, all right, Spellshaper. Wow.
Yeah. So let's see if that's going to do it. Let's see. So best case scenario, well, they're going to attack. They're going to go up. Ooh. Unstable form. Oh my God. These unstable forms.
Yeah, we've seen those do work tonight.
Summon, you gain 4 life. Obviously, it was already in place, so they don't get that. And pay 6 to give Devotee a +1, and you gain 1 life. But it's already a 5/5, so... Ooh, they are swinging with everything, though. They're going to go up to 12, though. Is that going to be enough damage? If they draw power off the top, that's going to be 4, 1 from the damage, 10. Oh, they're 1 shy, right? If my math serves me correct. They're 1 shy. The 1 damage off the Highwayman, 4 from here, and then... man... So close. Luckily for Rokoku for drawing that. And hey, YurickYu showing some patience. It's like, you know what?
If you don't have lethal, you're not going to go for it right now. Going to set up, make sure they can survive to the next turn, and be able to maybe make that play the following turn when they have more units out, or even the turn after. But if it's not lethal, you're not going to do it. Smart play by YurickYu to not fall for it. Try to figure out your outs. Play around what you can.
So if they draw, ooh, all right. Done 3, but they have 2 blockers, so
aggressive.
Unstable form
there, but unstable form. Let's see what they can get. Can they get a flyer? 3 power flyer. Oh no, 2 more unstable forms.
Oh
And there
my
it
god.
is. And there's the 3 power flyer Rokoku. Wow.
Wow. Triple unstable form to get the Xaxes. Wow.
Wow. Unstable form. Triple unstable form. Unreal. And you knew they were going all in on it at that point. Once you cast the first 2, you're going for the third one. You're going for the win.
I mean, you got to feel like YurickYu started to take a breath after the second one and still no dice, but the
Oh,
third
man.
one got there.
Oh, man.
That was close. I mean, that was lethal on both sides of the board by like mere hairs that they missed it. 1 point for YurickYu, and then obviously there they needed the third unstable form on the last remaining unit for Rokoku to take that one.
Absolutely. Now, with the unstable form, because it is costing, 1 more, it does actually get more and more likely the more times you cast it to be able to get something powerful. But yeah, the triple unstable form to be able to get it. What an incredible finish to that game. All right, so this is game 3 of round 2. So we've got YurickYu, both these players at 1-0. YurickYu's got the Black Hole War Leader, they've got the Instigator, and they've got Double Torch in hand.
And Shakedown is going to take out the Sodi Spell Shaker, which is one of the biggest tempo plays for the Elysian deck. So that's a good pull for YurickYu. And then obviously having the Torch to take out Teacher of Humility. So even though they don't have an aggressive start, they are in a very controlling position. Interesting to see if they fire off that second Torch to take out the Yorja. Sure enough, they do, because they've seen it get huge in previous games. So the new promo card making a splash here and already earning respect from some of our top competitive players.
Second Yorja here following up. We see the first of the unstable forms, this time hitting the War Leader on the other side of the table, comboing really nicely with Yorja here.
Yep.
Okay, YurickYu drawing Rista for the turn. Pretty nice draw. They also have Incarnus, and here we go. I think this is our first Incarnus of the night. What an incredible card this has been. More in Expedition, but in Throne as well. Just a powerhouse of value here. Getting a 3/3 unblockable with Mastery and a free Invoke. And getting an Umbran Reaper there. Pretty nice draw for them.
Yeah, if the previous games have showed anything, is that these games have been coming down to the wall. Both opponents just kind of ignoring each other on blocks and oh man, Sodi Spell Shaper coming down though. It's gonna bounce the interesting. They decided to keep the Incarnus around. I wonder if they have a follow-up play, or if they're just not worried about, they don't think it's gonna get to the second mastery. But sure enough, they get him for 4, draw a card. They are also 2/3 of the way to the mastery. Remember, once it hits its mastery, she's gonna drop -2, transform a unit -2 cost on the opposite side, and then but Desecrate is gonna make short orders, so we're not gonna see the first ever world first Yorja mastery here on this round at least.
Well, I believe Rokoku should have the second unstable form to take care of the Incarnus as well. I don't think they went to the market at all.
It's gonna be interesting because, like I said, or like we were talking, Reaper, Life Swing.
Second Incarnus.
Ooh.
Second Incarnus here, invoking again, just really getting head and card advantage here. We've talked about that last time 2 weeks ago, but just even if you draw something like a vanilla 4/1, just the ability to get up on card advantage and have a must answer threat is just really hard to put your finger on how much value that's really giving you.
Yeah, Rokoku showing only Initiate of the Sands on the board with 2 cards in hand, and then the flip side we go 2 Incarnuses, an Instigator, and then 5 cards in hand. So.
And there's the second unstable form. We knew that Rokoku had that as an answer to Incarnus, but didn't see the second Incarnus coming. We need to find an answer for that one.
Yep. It'd be interesting to see if we see the Impatient Pyromage come down, or if they just decide to pull the trigger on the Umbran Reaper. With 1 card in hand, oof, yep, yeah, sure enough, they smell blood in the water. They want to go for lethal, and they're deploying that Umbran Reaper.
Yeah, Sodi's not going to do it. This is where Rokoku needs a sweeper, and don't think they have any, and that's not going to be enough. That's just lethal on board. You got basically 8 unblockable damage for YurickYu.
Yep.